Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 10th of August, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I'm sure all of you saw this yesterday, but basically someone was, I don't know if they were trolling or if they were kind of like protesting here, but someone was withdrawing funds out of Tornado Cash to a bunch of publicly kind of like doxed ENS addresses here of kind of like popular people on Twitter, but off Twitter as well. I mean, in crypto Twitter and outside of it. So basically influencers. Now, of course, I'm on the list and I'm actually in this screenshot here. I had some funds sent to me, 0.83 ETH sent to me from Tornado Cash. Now, as I said, don't know if this is being done as a troll or a protest or both. Protest because it kind of like shows the absurdity of these kind of like sanctions as I discussed yesterday. Like, is Sassal, the Sassal.eth address now, bricked? Can I not touch it? Is it like, if I touch it, am I going to get in trouble for doing that because I'm interacting with kind of ETH that was received from a sanctioned kind of address? Like, you see where I'm going with this, right? Like, people started withdrawing it to centralized exchange hot wallets. Like, are they going to be kind of like doing something illegal now? It's really, really silly. And it's not like Bitcoin where you have the UTXO set and you can choose which kind of like UTXOs you want to spend. The Ethereum account model means that all the ETH is fungible. So I can't, pick out the ETH that was sent to me from Tornado Cash and say, okay, well, I'm not going to use this ETH. This ETH is the tainted ETH. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use my kind of like untainted ETH. I can't do that. Like, it's all fungible. So maybe I could send that exact amount to the burn address, and then I could be like, hey, I didn't use it. It was sent to me, and I just kind of like got rid of it. Because you can't send it back to the person who sent it to me because it's anonymous, right? It went through Tornado Cash. I don't know where that ETH came from, right? So it's messy. It's silly. Honestly, I don't even know which lawyer I could speak to. I don't even know what advice they give me at this point because it's just such a fresh thing. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't done any transactions on Sassal.eth since I got this thing, but not because of this. Just I haven't managed to do any transactions. But I'm not too concerned. Like, one, I'm not a US citizen, and two, like, I feel like saner heads would prevail if I was, I don't know, got taken to court over this or something like that. Something extreme, right? I feel like you could just easily argue that, like, hey, I didn't actually use this. This was just sent to me from here. And again, this is why these sanctions are really, really dumb. But I just wanted to kind of mention that because I saw a lot of people tag me in this and was like, some people making fun of me saying, oh, finally Sassal's going to jail. I'm like, what did I do to make people hate me this much? Like, it's just weird. I think, depending on how, like, the bigger you get with a following, the more people hate you for whatever reason. But I was just kind of like laughing it off, and then we had a bit of a laugh about it in the Discord channel. But there is serious ramifications here. Like, I mean, you can see other people on this list, like Jimmy Fallon, for example. He has an ENS. So yeah, just very weird, but just wanted to kind of like call it out there because I saw people tagging me in it and just wanted to let people know I'm definitely aware of it. I'm just kind of like, well, it is what it is, right? Like, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't stop people from sending Tornado Cashed ETH to my public address and to any of my addresses, right? Unless my wallet was a smart contract wallet and I basically had a whitelist of what could send me funds. But Sassal.eth isn't that, right? It's just kind of like a normal EOA. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to move on from that. There's a bunch more updates to get through, particularly with the merge. Obviously, the Goerli Merge is happening today. The current time is a bit weird. Like, if you go to bordel.wtf, it's currently happening at 3:30 a.m. UTC. That is a bit later than what it was yesterday. I believe that's 1:30 p.m. my time or something like that. And there's also going to be a Bankless live stream, of course. Where is that Bankless live stream? I think it's here. Yeah, there's going to be a Bankless kind of like Goerli Merge live stream that I'm going to be on, hopefully. It just depends what time it happens because I have some people coming to my house tomorrow to do things. So I'm hoping that it doesn't happen when those people are here, so I can actually join the live stream, but we'll have to see, right? Like, the problem with TDD, or I guess like the drawback of TDD, is that it's really hard to kind of, I guess, schedule, or I guess like know the exact time that the TDD is going to be hit and the merge is going to go through, even on something like a POA network, right? So yeah, that's happening. And I thought this was quite funny. Vitalik's dad here, Dimitri, shared a picture with the caption, "You're watching Michael Saylor YouTube videos talking about the 10 commandments. Ethereum teams are getting ready for the Goerli testnet merge today. Last one before the actual merge. And I am playing weird games. We are not the same." There's a picture of Vitalik and Dimitri literally playing 3D chess here, which I thought was quite funny. So yeah, I like that he kind of like shared that there. But it really speaks to the major difference between, I guess, the two communities. One of them likes to talk about kind of like the commandments and the holiness of Bitcoin and stuff like that, and the other's just plodding along with technical upgrades, right? And maybe I'm generalizing a bit there, but that's kind of like the vibe. And in other merge-related news, both Tether and Circle have basically said that that USDT and USDC will only be redeemable on the proof of stake Ethereum chain. That will not be redeemable on the proof of work chain if there is one that gets kind of like forked off, which means that the USDC and the USDT will logically go to zero on the proof of work Ethereum chain. It'll be basically worthless, so maybe you'll have time to get out of it before that happens. I don't know. It's going to be a mess. That proof of work chain is going to be an absolute bloody disaster. Like, I actually hope it happens just so I can watch it play out, because this is probably the only time it's ever going to happen in a large-scale way. And I'm just, kind of like a fork of the Ethereum state and all the negatives that come with that. And Chainlink also said they're not going to be supporting the proof of work Ethereum chain, so goodbye all the oracles. It's going to be pretty entertaining to watch, to be honest. So I'm definitely going to be watching out for that. But great to see that both Tether and Circle have come out and definitively said, even though we knew this was going to happen, like there was basically a 0% chance they were going to support anything on the proof of work Ethereum chain. But this basically is kind of like hard confirmation from both of them. So I'm glad they put this out there. There's a new merge related blog post from Blocknative today, all about block building and how that's going to be being done post merge. You've probably heard of things like PBS before, proposer builder separation. MEV, of course, you've heard about. And this is all stuff that's kind of being worked on post-merge. And Blocknative are the experts in this area. You probably remember me suggesting the podcast that Matt Cutler, one of the co-founders and CEO of Blocknative, did with Bankless. You should definitely go check that out if you haven't yet either. Very, very great company, doing a lot of great things around this. I should kind of disclose that I'm an advisor to them, but I mean, I became an advisor because I think they're doing amazing work. I think that they're doing work that is going to be very valuable long-term for Ethereum, and yeah, they keep putting out this awesome information too. So definitely go check out this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description. And I think this is the last merge-related thing. DeFi Pulse did an interview with Justin Drake here that you can kind of like watch on Twitter, and I think it's on YouTube as well. So if you go to the DeFi Pulse YouTube channel, you'll be able to find it there. So just wanted to give a shout out to that one. But I think that's all the merge-related news. The next time I do the refuel tomorrow, the Goerli Merge will pretty much hopefully be done. I mean, there's no reason why it won't be done. And then we'll be looking at the mainnet merge. As I said, TTD will either be kind of, I guess, proposed on the consensus layer call, which is happening this week, or the all core devs call, which is happening next week. We'll have to see. But I mean, within the next 2 weeks, we'll know, I guess within the next maybe week, not even like 10 days, we'll know when mainnet TTD is, like the kind of like timeline. I still think it's going to be that week of September 19th. It could happen earlier, could happen, much later. It could. So this is the thing about TTD and timing around it. Because with mainnet, I mean, even though the same games won't be played with the hash rate as they were on kind of like Ropsten and Sepolia, it's kind of like hard to know how much miners are going to drop off, right? Like, is it going to be like 30% or 50% or 60% of the network that drops off before the kind of like merge TTD gets hit? Which means that, let's say we propose the merge TTD with an estimation of it happening between September 19th and September 26th. Well, what happens if more kind of hash goes offline than we suspected, right? Well, that could push the mainnet merge out to early October as an extreme. So just like that's the trickiness with TTD, and we're going to have to see how kind of like that goes there. But there's always the option to override it too. Like if a lot of the network drops off, we can basically override the TTD that was set so we can make it happen earlier. But regardless, it's going to happen. We just have to wait for it to get hit. But yeah, anyway, that's all the merge related updates for today. On to some exciting layer 2 updates. So we had Arbitrum announce New Dawn is upon us. They have Arbitrum Nova, which I think I spoke about a few months ago when they announced this, but this is now live and open to the public. Nova is a new chain built on the Arbitrum AnyTrust technology and optimized for social and gaming applications that require ultra-low fees and high security. So Reddit is using this. I remember discussing with you guys that Reddit had their community point system that they were using Arbitrum to scale with, and they're doing that via Nova. So Nova is not a roll-up. It is more akin to like a Validium that I've spoken about before, where the data is actually stored off-chain as part of a data availability committee, which they have here. These are the partners that they're kind of like entrusted to, I guess, hold that data here. Obviously, a lot of big names: Consensus, FTX, Google Cloud, P2P Validator, QuickNode, Reddit, and Off-Chain Labs. It's a pretty trusted set. I mean, it's a completely trusted set, but these are big entities. They're not just unknown entities here. So very, very cool to see that. But yeah, I mean, that's the only way right now they can, I guess, offer those ultra low fees. Like, I'm not talking about like 10, 20 cents. I'm talking about actual ultra low, like 0.00001 cent or something like that. And that's what ImmutableX has been doing as a Validium, right? On Ethereum. They're just storing the data off chain, posting the proof kind of like on chain. And that, I believe, is similar to what kind of like Arbitrum Nova does here. So very, very cool to see that this is now live. And Reddit is going to be launching their community point system on Nova. And you can bridge to Nova right now if you want to. I mean, in the blog post here, you can kind of like see, if you kind of scroll down a bit, you can see all the information about this, about the data availability committee, getting started with Nova, using the, Arbitrum bridge here to do so. So very, very cool to see that Arbitrum has, Off-Chain Labs, I should say, has launched their second chain here just before they're launching Arbitrum Nitro, right? Like, Nitro is coming in, I guess, 21 days from now. August 31st is when they said that they'd be live there. So a lot happening on the Arbitrum front, and not just small things either, like big things with big partnerships like Reddit. I mean, imagine Reddit eventually doing a kind of like token airdrop for community points on Nova. Imagine the amount of new users we're going to be getting into the Ethereum ecosystem because of this. Like, this is really cool. Reddit's user base is absolutely massive. Obviously, it's, I guess, I don't remember the last time I checked what its user base was, but it was definitely, I think, in the hundreds of millions. So imagine having potentially that many people, even just a small percentage of those kind of like people using Arbitrum Nova. Very, very cool. Technically using Ethereum, right? Because it's on a layer 2 chain. People often kind of like debate the meaning of, I guess, like layer 2, and some people argue that Validiums and something like an Arbitrum Nova is not, or an Arbitrum AnyTrust chain is not, quote unquote, a layer 2. But I think we have to start separating these things out, because like, while it's not a roll-up, I don't know, I still think we should call it a layer 2. Like, I think that because it's a hybrid, right? It's not like a strict layer 2 or a true layer 2, which is what roll-ups are, where everything goes on Ethereum layer 1. But I feel like the narrative war around kind of like the layer 2 terminology is not going to be won by being like, actually it's this, or actually it's that, right? I feel like but people already refer to everything as kind of like layer 2. So I don't know, it's just kind of like a battle that maybe is a discussion for another day, but something that I've been thinking about a lot lately anyway. But yeah, definitely go check out the blog post if you haven't yet around Arbitrum Nova, and onboard onto it if you want to do so. And L2Beat just in time has come out with an Arbitrum Nova project page, so you can kind of learn more about it here, see the TVL in Arbitrum Nova, and see all the controls like you normally would on L2Beat, which is very, very cool. This is a pretty detailed breakdown. All the contracts are linked here and everything, just like you would expect from the L2Beat team. So very, very cool to see that. Speaking of L2Beat, they also released a huge update to their infrastructure generally here. So the L2Beat.com website is now being updated on an hourly basis, so not just a daily basis. This has been a long requested feature, one that I've been meaning to see. I've been wanting to see for a long time, and it's using 20 times less bandwidth to compile as well. And there's also some high resolution charts. You can see here the TVL figure. This is, as I said, updated hourly for each and every project, and the total up the top here as well. What I wanted to kind of like point out here is optimism caught up pretty quickly in TVL, right? Like, it was a few spots down the list here. I think it was like a 500 million. Then it caught up very, very quickly when they started doing their, I guess, like rewards. You can see the spike in the chart here, which is pretty funny. But again, I go back to my, I guess, long-held belief that TVL is an inferior metric at this point. I know that the L2Beat team is working on being able to kind of like show a bunch of different metrics, not just TVL, but obviously other kind of like activity on here. But you've also got other websites like cryptofees.info, which show you L2 activity. Then you have like Arbiscan and OptiScan, which have charts, and obviously Dune Analytics as well, and things like that too. So you can definitely go check that out. But very cool to see that L2Beat did a massive upgrade, and now they update their TVL count to hourly instead of daily. All right, so this project that I have known about for a while because I'm an investor in them, there's your disclosure, has introduced themselves today. So Ingonyama here, hopefully I'm saying that right. Like, it's funny, I kind of laugh sometimes. I'm an investor in some projects where I mess up the pronunciation, but that's just me, as you guys know. But what this project is trying to do is something that I've spoken about before on the Refuel, is that they're wanting to lower the barrier to entry for zero knowledge proof. So actually computing the zero knowledge proof. So they're actually going to be developing the hardware or zero knowledge ASICs to make this a reality. So this is a reason why I back this company, because I think this is going to be a huge thing going forward. And I've discussed before how
obviously, like, miners will be able to kind of like use their equipment to prove zero knowledge, I guess, like proofs, and kind of like do the computation and everything like that. Well, with the hardware that Ingonyama is building here, they'll be able to do that in a more democratized and more scalable way, because obviously the ASICs that have been manufactured up till this point are made for proof of work, not necessarily made for proving out the kind of like ZKPs here. Whereas Ingonyama wants to kind of like solve that and make the hardware for that. So very, very cool to kind of like see them doing this and see them revealing themselves today. You can learn more about them, obviously, by reading this blog post, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But this is one thing that I'm very bullish on over the next few years, using hardware to compute the ZK proofs instead of using it to do proof of work. And as I mentioned before, this does not mean that we're just replacing proof of work energy usage with kind of like ZKP energy usage. It's got like I think I discussed this on the refuel the other day. It doesn't work like that at all. Like there is no proof of work here. You're literally just computing something that's kind of like a normal computation that you would do outside of ZKPs. Like using your GPU to play video games is running millions, trillions, or whatever number it is of computations to show that video game to you, right? So it's just using a normal kind of like amount of power there. And it doesn't scale linearly with the price of an asset. There's no asset tied to it. There's no kind of like difficulty that makes it kind of like harder to mine and more miners need to come online. There's none of that, right? It's literally just running your normal computations like you normally would, and like that data centers already doing things like that. Yes, they are heavy computations, so they're going to use more energy than just kind of like browsing the web, right, for example. But it's not going to be the energy usage of proof of work, not even close to that. I mean, it's not even worth comparing the two because they're so totally different, but I just wanted to clear that up from anyone who might be thinking that still. All right, so I should have talked about this before, but this was just another thread on Arbitrum's kind of like launch today, the Arbitrum Nova launch, I should say, with links to some more resources here. So definitely go check this out as well for more information on Arbitrum Nova, and I'll link that kind of like underneath the other Arbitrum announcement that I spoke about just before. All right, so speaking of layer 2s, Scroll's intern put out another thread today, which is an overview of Scroll's roller network. So what rollers do is they serve as the provers, as I was just kind of like discussing the provers with Ingonyama there. They serve as the provers in the Scroll network and are responsible for generating the validity proofs for the ZK rollup. So let's break down the workflow below. You can kind of see a nice little graphic here of how this kind of works at a very low level, but there's also a thread here, a mini thread here discussing this, and this kind of like links back to the Scroll architecture overview blog post that I spoke about the other day on the Refuel, which you can kind of obviously check out, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But yeah, guys, like things are moving along here very, very quickly. I think the focus hasn't just shifted to layer 2s in general, but it's really shifted to zero knowledge. Optimistic rollups are great, and they're obviously working today. They're going to be around for a very long time still, I think. But even the optimistic rollup teams are now kind of like getting ready for the ZK future. The ZK future, as I've discussed for years on this channel, is the future that we're barreling down towards. It's just that they weren't ready. They're still not ready for prime time, don't get me wrong. And optimistic rollups got us to that, are going to get us to kind of like, I guess, like a short to medium term solution. But on top of that, they're also being built in such a way where all of the stuff that's being built on Optimism and Arbitrum can just be kind of like plug and play with ZK. As I discussed the other day, Optimism Bedrock has been kind of like designed so that they can just rip out their fraud proofs and replace them with validity proofs, which is, zero knowledge proofs, so to speak, right? Which is very, very cool. So, yeah, a lot of talk about this, a lot of stuff going on about this lately, and we're just going to be seeing more and more of this as time goes on. The ZK future is not really a future anymore. I mean, it's already here. We are creating the future as time goes on, which is very, very cool to see. So I'll link this in the YouTube description for you to check out, of course. All right, so MetaMask has some updates today. So these are some more, I guess, like UI and UX updates here, basically making it easier to see what you're giving permission to. So you can see on the left-hand side here, the old interface of, I guess, kind of like giving permission to an NFT contract here, and then on the right side you have kind of like an updated interface that gives you a lot more information about what you're doing. So it says, do you want to give permission to this contract to access all of your Bored Ape Yacht Club kind of like apes here? By granting permission, you are allowing the following account to access your funds. So just a really good quality of life kind of like update here, UI UX update for users of MetaMask to make sure that they know what they're doing here. And there's a bunch of other updates as well, which you can read in the YouTube description below. But yeah, I mean, I like this. People often give MetaMask a lot of, I guess I would say, deserved grief for the UX and UI that they kind of like present to the user. But I think MetaMask is in this position where they have so many users that any changes that they make have to be changes that basically like a 10x improvement over what they already have, because they'll end up kind of confusing people if they don't do that. And obviously the MetaMask support team doesn't have the capacity to keep replying to millions of users wanting to kind of like ask, what is this change? Why does it show this? Are my funds gone? Blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And we've seen lots of MetaMask scam accounts pop up because of that as well. So I don't envy the MetaMask team in terms of kind of like the position that they're in and what they have to balance and the delicate balance that they have to kind of deal with. But it's great to see them dealing with it and still putting out these UI UX updates that are extremely important for the end user. So definitely go check out this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description. All right, so I forgot to cover this yesterday, but the Gamestop wallet is now fully integrated with the ImmutableX L2 protocol at wallet.gamestop.com. I think I covered this a few weeks ago when it initially went live, but now it is fully integrated apparently, which is very, very cool. So you can, as I said, go to wallet.gamestop.com here, can download the kind of like wallet here onto your phone, in your browser or onto your iPhone here, and use the ImmutableX network using the Gamestop wallet, which is very cool to see. So, I discussed this a few weeks ago, so no point rehashing it here, but there's more information on the website, which I will link in the YouTube description below. All right, the last two things I'm going to talk about today is a bit of commentary here. One of the tweets is from Pseudotheos, who says, "Crypto is inherently political. Decades of difficult work was done by cypherpunks to allow you to flip monkey JPEGs on the blockchain. With the worst legal fight still ahead of us, please contribute to crowd-funded crypto legal defenses when possible." And I remember, I think it's been a while now, probably a couple of months now, I spoke about the Pooley NFT that was kind of like being done, or an NFT drop that was done to fund Leighton Cusack, the founder of Pool Together, his legal defense against kind of like a troll that seems to be suing him for absolutely no reason. But it's not just there, right? Obviously, we had the Tornado Cash stuff that happened yesterday, or yesterday. Yeah, I covered it yesterday on the Refuel. And we need to be spinning up more legal defenses. We need to be kind of like hitting back on these sorts of things. We need to be challenging these things in the courts, because at the end of the day, they're not something that should be standing, right? Especially the harsh sanctions on Tornado Cash, which are very unjustified in my view, and also unworkable, as I discussed at the beginning of this of the refill today. But yeah, I think what Pseudotheos here does is hit on a really, really important point about all the work that was done over the past few decades to get us to this point. Because if you don't know the history of cryptography and the history of kind of like crypto in general, and I'm not talking about crypto as in cryptocurrency, I'm talking about cryptography in general and the early work done by the cypherpunks to make sure that things like all cryptography wasn't outlawed. I mean, the government has tried to ban these sorts of things in the past. Like they tried to ban it in when the internet was getting popular, because they didn't want, I guess, like people being able to hide their presence on a massive communications network, right? So they tried to do it, and then the cypherpunks fought back against them. And I mean, the TLDR is obviously that the cypherpunks mostly won. They didn't win everything, because there are still kind of like things that governments have done or are doing to make it really hard for people to, I guess, like be completely anonymous online and stuff like that. But they fought these battles, and they kind of like fought for us. And that's what enabled us to kind of like have these luxuries that we enjoy today, which is like fully encrypted communication across the internet. You have that. You have end-to-end encrypted communication, which is, a marvel of, I guess, like technology, but a marvel of social and political, I guess, like wars that have been fought in the past as well. And now we're at the beginning of a new war, and that is the war for crypto. Like, then this kind of like leads me into my second tweet, where I said, I've long believed that the only way to test if something is truly centralized is to have nation states try to control it. We're only at the beginning of this war, not the end. And Pseudotheos actually had a comment which I thought was pretty apt here, where he replied and said, "We've finally left the tutorial area." We have. Like, up until this point, guys, like, I mean, I know there's been other government action before, but I think that it really was a red letter day when the kind of like US government sanctioned, the US Treasury Department sanctioned Tornado Cash, which is open source code. And I really do think it's a turning point. And I really do think we're at the beginning of this war. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep building better, more robust, decentralized tools, because we can't rely on governments to kind of like regulate this responsibly. Like, even if we lobby them, even if we fight them in their own court, even if we try really hard to get them on side and to get them to understand all this sorts of stuff, Not all governments are created equal. Not all of them are going to apply the laws, regulations, rules, and stuff equally. And a lot of them are going to get it wrong. A lot of them don't want to have a kind of like democratic process. I mean, a lot of governments around the world, unfortunately, are not very democratic. Even the ones that are democratic don't look very democratic, right? Which is just an unfortunate reality. So if we want to, I guess, keep building and keep using decentralized tools, we have to fight for it. And there are multiple ways to fight for it. Obviously, one is to fight them on their own turf, right, in their own court, which you can do through lobbying, through the actual literal courts and things like that. But the other way is to stop building garbage centralized tools. Like, I know centralization is kind of like existing in a lot of DeFi, obviously a lot of the layer 2s, and for good reason. But the thing is that they shouldn't be centralized for longer than they have to be. Like, yes, okay, do it because you want to put training wheels on and all that sorts of stuff. You want to kind of like balance, I guess, decentralization and I guess being able to upgrade the system and also user safety. But like, you're either going to be decentralized or someone's going to decentralize or going to force you to decentralize. Because if the government comes and comes knocking and basically says, hey, we don't like, for example, on one of those layer 2 networks, if the US government comes knocking and says, hey, we notice that this address is kind of like doing stuff on your layer 2 network, and we know that you have total control over this network, we want you to blacklist this address. Well, if it's a US-based layer 2 team and they have this control because they have the admin keys, then they have to comply. If they do not comply, they get thrown in jail. So this is the seriousness of the situation here, and this is why we need to decentralize everything as quickly as possible. And as I said yesterday, I'm not just talking about the smart contracts, I'm talking about the front ends, I'm talking about the RPCs and stuff like that, the wallets and everything, just everything in general needs to be decentralized if we want to be able to resist nation states. They are the final boss. They're not going anywhere. They're extremely powerful, right? Like, they're the most powerful entity in the world. Like, there's nothing more powerful than a nation state. They have total power to do what they want to. I mean, yes, there's checks and balances, but I mean, like, these days, like, they have wartime kind of things that they've kind of enacted. They have all these like acts. I mean, I know in the US, there's some special acts that allow them to treat people that they suspect to be terrorists differently, and they haven't applied that evenly, of course, because that's not what governments do. And anything that I guess like touches the financial system and allows people to kind of evade monitoring of their financial activity is something that the government does not want to enable. And I think that the reason why they're happy with blockchains, I guess like normally, is because they're very transparent. It's very easy to track people. They have total view over the centralized exchange infrastructure. But it's when you start going into the privacy aspect of things, and when you start kind of like using tools like Tornado Cash, is when they have a problem with it, which is for obvious reasons. So we need to keep fighting. We need to keep building better tools. But yeah, I think that's all I kind of like wanted to talk about with regards to those two tweets today. If you're working on products within crypto and your products aren't decentralized, well, I mean, you should probably have like a path towards decentralization for them. And I know maybe it's not practical. Maybe kind of like you need that centralization at this point in time, and that's totally fine. But just be aware of the fact that centralization is a massive point of weakness, and the faster you move towards full decentralization, the better off you will be, because you can basically say to any nation state or to any authority that comes to you, it's like, hey, I literally can't control these sorts of things. Now, if the nation state wants to go further and say, well, we're going to prosecute you for deploying that code in the first place, well, that's a whole nother kettle of fish and probably a discussion for another time. But definitely that goes into very scary territory and something that I guess we can't really fight against. The only way to fight that would be to be kind of like a total anon builder, which there are some of those, but like I'm talking total anon, like covering your tracks wherever you go. It's very hard. I worked in cybersecurity. One slip up can basically ruin you. Like, seriously, we call them APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. Some of them do very, very well covering their tracks, very, very well. But literally one slip up, like one kind of like time when you haven't put your VPN on and you leak your real IP address is all it takes for you to be brought down. So it's a very scary prospect that even if you try to build completely anonymously, it only takes one slip up. And it's actually amazing that no one has been able to figure out who Satoshi is. Maybe the NSA did in the US or something, and they just haven't revealed it. But to stay truly anonymous online is a very difficult task. So kudos to anyone who's able to do that. But that might be the reality eventually of people trying to build these sorts of stuff. If they want to build truly decentralized tools, they may have to do it completely anonymously or do it in a country that's not going to extradite them to hostile places like the US and even Western Europe and things like that. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for today. I think I ranted long enough there. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.